and welcome to another episode. As you know, it's me, your host, Mary Ann Dersch. You are probably listening to this or watching this after the start of 2026. I do record about 6 weeks out just to give myself, some content in the can, as they say, or maybe they don't. I just say it. And so I think about what's going to be happening in the next couple of coming weeks to keep the topics timely. However, today I'm going to be talking about something that is actually pretty timeless, and that is setting up boundaries and agreements. And and also at the start of a year is a really good time to be thinking about how, we think about how we want to live our lives differently and how we want the coming year to be different than the last year. Do we want different results, different things out of our life? As you know, I coach and train nonprofit leaders to master the art of influence. And what this means is raising your standards, right? Raising your standards and then creating boundaries and agreements to uphold those standards. So if you want to do better, right? If you want to raise more money, be a more effective leader, engage your board more effectively, if you just want to have more ease, grace, and flow in your life, no matter what aspect of your life, we're raising our standards, we're raising our ceiling. Right, we're raising our ceiling, we're raising our expectations. When we raise our expectations, we raise our standards to rise with them. And so if our expectations or our desires are the ceiling, then our standards are the floor. It's the thing we don't go below. And then we create boundaries and agreements as walls to uphold those expectations. We can't change behavior unless we change the boundaries and agreements that uphold and support that behavior. It is all part of this framework of a house. And that if you want to raise your expectations, if you want to do better, then you're going to raise your standards for what you will and will not accept in your life. And from that place, then we create boundaries and agreements to support that new standard. I want to say it's impossible because I don't like to speak in absolutes. And however, I would say that it is pretty difficult to change behavior or change outcomes without raising your standards and putting boundaries and agreements in place to uphold those standards. And I want to give credit to one of my coaches, Dr. Aaron Wilkerson, who introduced me to the idea of not just boundaries, but boundaries and agreements. So today we're going to talk about why boundaries and agreements are important, what's different about them, and then how we can put them into our own life in order to get more of what we want, where you can get what you actually want this year. Let's think about how many frustrations come from things in your life that you never actually agreed to, but you somehow wind up doing it. Like you wind up taking a meeting at a time that's really inconvenient for you to meet, or maybe like you had an afternoon planned of doing this kind of work and then somebody interrupts you and you wind up on a whole nother path. Um, and here's another aspect of this. Think about how many things that you do that are frustrating for other people because you are because they have not set a boundary or an agreement with you. And so they feel either taken advantage or misled or frustrated or whatever with you. I want you to think about how this affects you, but it also affects other people. And if I truly believe that most people are working from positive intent, if the board member calls and says, hey, can you meet today at 4? And you had things planned to do at 4, but it's really not a meeting. It's nothing you could get through. So you go, okay, I guess I got to meet him at 4. He doesn't realize that that is frustrating you. He doesn't realize that that you had a boundary. And the same that could go opposite, right? You could ask somebody, hey, can you meet at 4? And they say yes, but they did it with resentment and now they're frustrating. So not only is it helpful for you to learn how to navigate boundaries and agreements and how to actually ask for and get what you really want and what you really need to be successful, you can teach other people to do it too, because people who have strong boundaries and agreements are more likely to uphold others because you get it. You get where they're coming from. I'm going to give you a couple of examples and then we're going to get into the content. Um, like here's more ideas of frustrations. Like I used to do Zumba every Tuesday. This was a few years back, but this was like a big deal at our Y. Um, and I did this like for 5 years. Now it's trivia night. Every Tuesday is trivia night, but I always have something to do on Tuesday. So people say, "Oh, can you do it on Tuesday?" No, I'm sorry, I can't. And they'll say, "What do you have?" And well, I have Zumba. Oh, couldn't you just miss? Or couldn't you do it another day? No, first of all, I don't have to explain why or why not I'm doing anything, but that's another issue. Like, I can say, no, I'm booked that night. Like, and so but there's a person that's trying to press my boundaries and trying to push them, but they don't realize they're doing that. They don't realize that they're just seeing if well, maybe you can miss because maybe you really don't have a boundary. You know what? Yeah, I don't really care. I'll do it. Okay. So but when we ask for people to collapse their boundaries or their agreements with themselves or with others, we're creating resentment and difficulty already. And so it's up to us, it's up to you to understand and honor both yours and other people's. So let's talk about the difference between boundaries and agreements. Boundaries are, when most people talk about boundaries, and we talk, oh, I want to set a boundary around that. I get that. But then there's agreements. So boundaries are things we don't want to have happen, and agreements are things we do want to have happen. An example would be, I don't want people texting me at all hours. Okay, that's a boundary, right? But what's an agreement? I respond to messages between 9 to 5. That is an agreement that you can make with yourself. And and what is it? What agreements do is help us actually articulate what we do want. It is easy to say what we don't want. It takes, I think, in my experience, a little more forethought to think about what we do want. And as you know, because if you listen to me at all, you know that the mind can't process a negative. If I say think of a pink elephant, you will think of a pink elephant. If I say don't think of a pink elephant, you'll think of a pink elephant. If I'll tell my kid, don't run in the street, all they hear is run in the street. They never even thought about running in the street till you brought it up. So it's important that to train our brain, is that we say what we actually want instead of what we don't want. It's like if I don't want to eat junk food, your brain goes, junk food, let's have junk food. So instead of like saying, I don't want to eat junk food, say, I want to eat food that nourishes and energizes me. And then you can decide if that whatever food is going to be nourishing and energizing for you. But agreements actually have us understand what we do want. One of my clients, Kylie, this was a few years back. The place that she worked previously had a very small office, and there was a lot of chatter. And people would get up and chat with each other. And there would be things, mostly like grants that she had to do, or especially if she was on a deadline, where the chatter really wasn't serving her. And so she's like, I don't want to be interrupted. Okay, that's a boundary. But what do you want? Because there were times when it would be okay to have a chat. And in fact, it would be welcome. There are times it wouldn't. So she put up a curtain, like in the opening of her cube. I guess there was maybe a bar infrastructure somewhere where there was a bar across, and she hung a curtain. And when the curtain was closed, she did it, that signaled to stay clear. When the curtain was open, feel free to come in. And she said the first time she pulled it across, she got so nervous, but it actually worked out really well. When people approached her, they didn't know she was doing a grant. They didn't know what her state was. And then if she felt compelled to stop what she was doing to speak with them, then now she is in resistance, right? She's building resentment. So thinking about how this works is it actually puts you in a position to to understand and ask for what you want. We typically start with boundaries, and that's okay. And I'm going to say why. Because again, not these are boundaries and agreements aren't good or bad. They are things, right? If somebody's going to come attack me, I don't want to say, oh, could we make an agreement that you not attack me? Right? No, that's okay to have a boundary. Boundaries are protective. They help us name what is draining or harmful or unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Um, and often it's easier to talk about them because the discomfort is noticeable and it's something we've all are already experienced, right? We know what it feels like to be interrupted. Um, and so we don't want that to happen anymore. We know what it feels like to be attacked or be criticized, and we don't want that anymore. But stopping boundaries keeps us in avoidance mode. So instead of bringing in what we really want in our life, we're putting things to avoid what we don't want in our life. So boundaries without agreements lead to confusion. Like I'm saying, I don't want this. And the people are like, okay, well, what do you want? You're like, oh, I don't know. Never really thought of that. And it leads to resentment because people, like you could say, people keep violating my boundaries because they don't know what else to do. They don't know. They don't. If you're not supposed to be interrupted, then when is an okay time to talk? Most people will follow the direction you give them, but you're not giving them direction that is useful to them, and it leads to a lot of incomplete communication, which again leads to resentment. I'm going to give you another example really quickly. And I see this a lot of time with boards. Board involvement. The organizations will change agreements on board members. And they'll say, like, maybe your board wasn't a fundraising board, and now you want them to get involved in fundraising. And I said, I never agreed to this. What? Wait, hold on. And you're like, oh, you changed an agreement on somebody. You changed the rules of the game without letting them know and just expect them to jump in and come along. So I want to talk about the power of agreements so we can move from avoidance and resentment and what the discomfort and avoidance to intention and creation of the reality that we actually want. Agreements shift energy from no to yes, from restriction to creation. And they tell people and yourself how to be in a relationship with yourself. So you are teaching people how to treat you. I say this all the time. We teach people how to treat us. We're constantly educating people. And if you're not very good at educating people, they might not treat you well. And I'm not saying like any sort of abuse or um, uh, uh, abuse or discomfort in a relationship is your fault. I'm saying that when you raise your standards and you ask for what you want and you allow people to meet that new agreement. In my experience, people either rise to the new agreement or they fade away. And I've seen it when you raise your standards, there are people that come with you or they'll just fade away. And this can be a little bit painful, but it is true. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But just understand that agreements tell people, including yourself, how to be in a relationship with you and what your standards are for that relationship. Now, they bring clarity, predictability, safety, and also empowerment because agreements help people understand what the standard is and how they can meet it. Here's an example. Don't talk to me that way. That's a boundary, right? Agreement. Let's agree to speak to each other with respect, even when we disagree. Okay? Boundary. Stop burdening me with last minute requests. Agreement. We plan projects with a minimum of one. Can we agree? Or let's agree that we plan projects with a minimum of 1 week's notice. I want to go back to the board for a second because I think this is really important because most board members have agreements that they meet. I was doing a coaching session with an organization and they had staff and board present and we pulled up their board agreement and the whole agreement was here's what you're going to do, board member, for us as an organization. You're going to attend this many meetings. You're going to participate in these things. You're going to give this much money, whatever it was. And I said, but an agreement is not just what I can do, like what a board member can do for an organization, but what does the organization pledge to do, agree to do for the board member? Provide training, provide support. Like, what is your commitment to them? You can't just, I don't want to say you can't. I think it works best when both parties are saying, here's what we agree to. I'm going to give this and you're going to give this. And then it also reminds staff that we just can't say, hey, you have to do this. How can, if they are going to, support fundraising, how can, as a staff member, what do I agree to do to help you achieve that goal? Here's where we can provide training, support, board buddies, one-on-one sessions, whatever it is, right? Like, but we don't think about that. We only think about what the board member can do for us. So go dust off those board agreements and see if you look at them in a different light. Here's why agreements work better. They create shared expectations, not just rules imposed on others. So, as I just mentioned in that board agreement example, we're creating shared expectations. We're not just saying, no, 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 right? Or you do this for me or else. And you can do what you do all this, and I'm going to sit back. It helps us understand how both people can contribute to success. And they are collaborative, right? You create it with somebody, not against them. Again, it's not the finger wagging, policing. It's, hey, what can we do to support each other to get the best outcomes ever? They reduce friction, increase connection, and they help you get more of what you want, not just protect yourself from what you don't want. And they're memorable and more actionable because you're giving somebody clear direction. Okay, here we go. How to shift a boundary into an agreement. Here's a simple process that you can use. Identify the boundary. Again, what is it I no longer want to experience? What is not working for me, right? What is the experience I do want instead? So moving from a negative of stop interrupting me to a positive, I want to feel heard in conversations, right? And then turn it into a clear agreement. Use language like, here's how I would prefer this to work, or a helpful agreement for both of us would be, or let's decide together. Okay. Now, the organization that I was coaching, we were talking about their board. They're going to meet in January and they're going to review this document because let's decide together how we want to participate. Let's decide together how we want these meetings to run. Let's say you have like you have a standing meeting and there's somebody they're just chronically late to this meeting. And you can say, okay, I don't want you to be late. Or, hey, I prefer, could we agree that you show up on time? And then you both can talk about how why it's important for both of you to show up on time. Or what's keeping that person, how can I support you in getting here on time, whatever it is. But we're going to create an agreement that we start the meeting at this time. Here's what might happen, okay? And I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm saying most people don't uphold boundaries or agreements because they get tested. If you are a person that is like, I'll give you an example of if you're a person that's always helping somebody and fixing things for people, when you decide that that behavior is no longer serving you and you don't want to fix things for people, but you're willing to help people solve their own problems, and but then people are saying, well, can't you just fix it? And you're like, yeah, well, um, I'm happy to guide you through the resolution. Just fix it. Why aren't you fixing it? They're going to get a little mad. They're going to test you. My coach Michelle used to call this initiation. An initiation. There's something about me that doesn't like that word, but anyway, you will be tested. And then like, oh, well, that upset people, so I guess I'm not going to do that. Like, so like when Kylie pulled that curtain across, if somebody may have said, what, I mean, she told everybody what the curtain was for and why. There was an agreement in place before she put it up. But let's just say somebody like opened that curtain and it's like, hey, because they don't really believe or trust the boundary, then you're like, well, that didn't work. Because they're not sure they believe you. They're not sure that they believe this version of yourself. And sometimes we freeze people, and I've talked about this before, we'll freeze people in a certain place. So when people change and people are allowed to change and they're allowed to grow and they're allowed to raise their standards, they're allowed to ask for what they want. And then when they do that, other people on the other side might resent that or not believe them and then push them. Let's say you're the texting, the first one I brought up. Hey, I answer texts between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and somebody texts you at 10 p.m. And then they like the next day they say, hey, I texted you and you didn't answer me. And you said, yeah, I answered text between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Like, oh, well, I really needed to talk to you. Like, great, you know, let's talk now. I'm here. But if that blowback, if you're not ready to stand up to a little bit of blowback, you might just drop it. Just know that you might have to, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm saying that it can happen where people will test your boundary and they will test the new agreement to see if you really mean it. And that is your choice to stand in that agreement, release the outcome, and let happen whatever's going to happen. Most of the time we can't uphold a boundary because we are afraid of what other people might think. Okay, so let's do examples of personal, professional, or agreements. Okay, personal is I start my day like a new agreement you might make with yourself is I start my 30 minutes of peaceful time before checking messages, right? Um, we communicate a team agreement. We communicate deadlines clearly and confirm understanding. We assume positive intent and ask before reacting. I love the agreement to just assume positive intent. Like when somebody cancels on me or maybe doesn't show up for a call they've booked, I, there's a part of me that's like, da, 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 like that. So then I was like, maybe I'm just going to assume positive intent. They forgot or whatever. They aren't, there's no negative intent around that action. It's just such an easier way to go through the world when you just assume that no one's doing anything to you. They maybe just got into something and forgot or whatever. And I always say, hey, I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you want to rebook. Okay, in donor relationships, we keep donors updated, weekly or quarterly or whatever. You're creating that agreement. It's the same with board members, right? We agree that the board will raise this much money. Great, that's an agreement. And then an organization can say, and we agree to support you in fundraising in the following ways. And then, and you could say an agreement that we model vulnerability and compassion in meetings. So there's all kinds of agreements you can create, and you probably already have some of them in place. You're not using this language. There's some unspoken or just understood things that are happening, but it really helps when you take them out and you put them up in writing and spoken word so that you understand the agreements. Now, you can also have agreements with yourself, which is probably the most powerful one. Your internal agreements will determine your external results every time. I speak to myself kindly. I honor my creative time. I pause before saying yes or no to a request. There's all kinds of agreements that you can have with yourself. Um, Again, I do trivia on Tuesdays. It's a really fun, positive thing in my life. And I love our trivia team is like this odd mix of people that just found their way into this group. And I love it. And so somebody asked me to speak at their class, which I'm happy to do. I love speaking at college classes. And I said, I'm happy to do it. And I need to leave by this time because I need to be on the road to get to my trivia night on time. He's like, absolutely, no problem. If he would have said, hey, can you come at 7? And I would have said, yeah, I guess I should do it. Now I got to miss trivia. No. So now I'm creating resentment because I'm allowing somebody to break a boundary that they didn't even know existed, right? He doesn't know that existed. But if I would say, hey, I have someplace I have to be at 7. So can we, do it like at 5:30 so I can be out by 6:30? He said, well, I really need you to come at 7. Well, I wouldn't be able to come then. And just letting that happen. I gave the example of a person who told me once I had, my whole afternoon planned out for this, and then a board member called and said, can you meet at 4? And I felt like I had to say yes. So she had an agreement with herself to block off this certain amount of time this afternoon and get some things done, but she wasn't able to do that because the board member called. But the board member didn't know that. So if she would say, hey, can you meet at 4 tonight? Um, I, I could meet you. I don't even like to answer yes or no to those requests. I just do what's called a redirect. So I'll just give them a redirect. Hey, can you meet at 4 o'clock today? I'm available between 10 and 2 tomorrow. I don't even have to say yes or no to that request. I just give them the redirect. Um, so because I made an agreement with myself that I'm going to block out this time. I'll give you one more quick example of an of a client who had an issue with people booking time on her calendar or literally like hunting her down to try to ask questions. And her day felt very much out of her control and very much at the mercy of the people around her. And so to raise her standard, to reclaim her sovereignty over her schedule, she put up some new agreements in place. And that was sort of like office hours. She would have office hours at a certain time. Like, I'm happy to see you from 3 to 4. I my doors open from 3 to 4 every day, or this day, or whatever, so that people knew when they could come to her and said, "Don't interrupt me. I'm open for discussion between this time and this time. Here's that schedule." Uh, that's why I love recurring events so much. I think standing meetings are the best. Okay. What gets in the way of creating agreements? I already mentioned this a little bit of what gets in the way because I said your boundaries will be tested, right? People may test you. You might fear that when you set an agreement, you might fear seeming demanding. You might fear disappointing others, that you're not going to text them right back. That of your of not knowing what you truly want, like you're afraid to say it because you're not sure this is what you want. Um, you are habitually accommodating to other people and subverting your own agreements with yourself and others. And also, you realize that agreements are restricting your freedom, not creating it. Boundaries are what we say no to. Agreements are what we say yes to. What is on the other side of saying no? If you're if you don't want to answer emails in the evening, which I don't think anybody should be doing that, um, then if you don't answer emails in the evening, that's a no. But what are you saying yes to? Uninterrupted time with my family, a chance to disconnect and recharge for the next day. Our world in the last 20 years or so has become more and more online, people are reachable at any point of the time of the day or night. And I think this can be taken advantage of pretty easily. And if you are a leader in an organization and you are messaging people at 10 p.m., because that's how you work best, you can make an agreement. Hey, you're going to hear from me at odd times, but please do not feel the need to ever respond. I met somebody and they had this footnote in their email that said, "You may be getting this at odd hours. However, I don't expect you to respond to me unless it's, you can, or like, your response to me can be during normal working hours." He just traveled a lot. He traveled internationally. So it may be, 3 in the morning, your time, and he's sending an email. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, no, just when it's your work day, you can respond. And so when you decide not to check emails, like after a certain time at night, then they say, "I emailed you last night. You didn't respond." Yeah, I respond to emails during the workday because, and you're right. I didn't. I'm responding now. Okay. What can I help you with? Again, the redirect. No, I did not. I am now. What can I help you with? But the idea of it's okay to get pushback because you're doing it in this instance. It was okay for her to get pushback on not checking emails at night because she got to spend uninterrupted time with her family. And in this case, her young child. And she's saying yes to time with her young child. And that is worth a little pushback. And soon enough, within a couple weeks, everybody got used to it. It was a non-starter. Okay. People will accept, they will either rise to meet your agreement or they'll fall away. When I first started doing this work, the work of the internal work of understanding, how my thoughts and feelings contributed to my everyday decisions, of the journey of conscious leadership. I thought, what if I raise my standards so high, I like outgrow my family? Like my husband, who's very pragmatic and scientific, and here I am getting into this like really intuitive, um, I want to say wooey, but I hate that word, universe of releasing the outcome and letting the universe guide you and all of this. And one of my coaches at the time said, Marianne, they're going to come with you and they won't even realize it. Their lives are going to get so much better because you're bringing them with you. And it's true. And I see it happen all the time. People will rise to meet the standard or they'll fall away. And because you're training people how to treat you. Um, one of my clients came to me, this was a couple years ago, and she said, I want to be credible. I want my organization to be seen as credible. And I said, what would make your organization credible? She said, well, if we got this kind of donor or this kind of thing. And I said, okay. Um, but it's really the opposite. When you feel credible, other people will see you that way. You want, a donor or a certain um, notoriety, right? Position in the community for your nonprofit, for you to be seen as credible when it's actually the other way. People aren't going to see something in you that is not there. They're going to see exactly what you show them. And if you believe that you're not credible, that's what they will see. When you believe they're credible, that's what they will see. And she took my course and she started to work with me, and we really did a lot of great work. And she raised that standard and she created new agreements to uphold those standards. And there was she had two people that were really burrs in the saddle. Okay. The one person was argumentative with her, and he was big shot in the community, argumentative with her, difficult to deal with. The second person was also quite difficult and critical and difficult to deal with, also of a big position in the community. The first guy, next time she talked to him, he was calling to let her know that they had won an award. Right? Guess who became credible and won a statewide award? Um, and their relationship completely changed. Um, the second person fell away. She actually left the community. So that person, my client raised their standard. The first person rose to meet it. The second one fell away. But the standards were held by agreements and boundaries and say, I will no longer be screamed at in a parking lot, right? That's just not okay. My agreement is that we treat each other with respect and civility. And that changed the relationship. And now it's completely different. So it can change. It does work. So how can you get started? Here's what I would suggest, okay? Choose one area. Just let's don't overhaul, right? Don't remodel the whole house at the same time, okay? Let's pick a focus area. Choose one area. Relationships, work, health, time management, whatever it is. Write a boundary and an agreement, what you don't want and what you do want, and then communicate the agreement to the necessary people and revisit it every once in a while because agreements can evolve. It came a time where Kylie didn't really need the curtain anymore because they had figured out a way to work together to understand their needs when it was good time to talk and when it wasn't. However, the curtain was a great starter to that conversation. A colleague and I had an agreement that for a while that we send voice notes to each other every day saying what we had done that day because the story we were telling ourselves is we didn't get a lot done. And we wanted to challenge that story. And so she would send me a voice note and I would send her a voice note. And we did that for about 3 months. And then we just naturally agreed that we had learned what we needed to learn and we could stop. So we can shift agreements at times, right? We can shift and change them as we need to. Again, because what we want may change, but it's how we get what we want is not from boundaries, from agreements. Think about what is the one agreement that would make next year feel the most spacious, joyful, aligned for you. And I would love for you to share with me what your agreements are. Um, And, this could be around your time, your leadership, your, your community engagement, whatever it is, make an agreement that would help next year feel spacious, joyful, and aligned. All right, that is it for me in this episode of the Influential Nonprofit. If you're listening to this and you're like, I want more. I want boundaries, I want agreements, I want standards, I want to raise more money, I want to connect with more donors. I want to move through the day with ease and flow. I'm tired of the grind, I'm tired of the hustle, I'm tired of carrying this whole organization on my back. Book a call with me. I am enrolling for my February course of Uplevel Your Influence, and I would love to talk to you about what you need, what I offer, and if it's a fit. If it's a fit, great. If not, it's always great to connect. And the calls will have massive, massive value for you because I really do help you understand yourself and what's going on and give you some guidance that you can implement right away. If at the end of that convo we feel like you need more, and you're ready for some training, then let's talk about it. As always, the link is in the show notes, and I would love to connect with you. It makes me so happy to be able to connect with people and help them. All right, find your new agreement. Let's put it in place for 2026, and we'll see you next time on the Influential Nonprofit.